if a child cannot communicate, think about yourself. You've just been skiing, you broke your leg, you broke your arm, you have laryngitis, you're on the couch, and you can't write. And a friend of yours has the remote control in charge of everything. Think about that. That's what it's like being someone who cannot communicate without tools.
And welcome to Parenting Special Needs Live. Today we're talking with new author Patricia E. Bailey. For 45 years, Patricia has worked as an early childhood educator, an education assistant, a tutor, and an interventionist. She's taught at colleges and presented workshops on the importance of communication to being fully involved in life. Her extensive background with children, teens, and young adults, coupled with her own unique life experiences as both an introvert and a highly sensitive person, gives her a unique perspective on communication. She's here with us to talk about her new book, Beyond Expectations, Into a World of Possibilities, where she has written down her real life experiences and insights to allow the opportunity for us to communicate better and understand our children. Please help me in welcoming Patricia to our show. Welcome, Patricia. How are you?
Excited to be here, actually. I'm quite pleased to be able to share my ideas and my book with everybody out there, all your subscribers. And it's a fabulous magazine, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you. I'm excited to be able to speak with you too. And like I said earlier, we kind of got our blue memo, right? Even though
yeah.
we're in blue. Anyway, so how about we start with you telling us why did you write the book?
Right. Well, when I was working in some of the schools as an education assistant, I had a couple of teachers and a speech and language pathologist were telling me, well, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you teach other people how to do that? Or why don't you write a book? Or why don't you do workshops on this? And so I sort of thought about it. I did do workshops on communication, but I hadn't thought about going any further than that. And then a few years later, when I was working in a high school in a special education room, support room, I noticed the other staff weren't picking up on what I was picking up on. One little boy, well, he was grade 9, cerebral palsy, and he only used his head switches in order to interact with communication systems. He also used his eyes as he did eye gazing on if I had yes or a no. He would look at that answer he wants and then look at me. He also had what was called a eye gaze board, and it was clear acrylic, so he could see my face and I could see him, and we would have different symbols on it or different pictures, so he could indicate what he was thinking or what he was choosing. And when I was there one time, a few years later, substituting, this boy was on the mat after therapy and he started fussing, and one of the staff asked him, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he started fussing some more, and she said, are you hurt? And she kept on asking him questions, and he kept on getting more upset. She called another staff over, the same thing. I couldn't understand what seemed so logical to me and so easy that they didn't think that he needed his communication equipment. Yes, they were worried about being upset, but he was only upset because he couldn't communicate. So I had picked up his, it's called ITRAN, eye gaze, and I put some pictures on it, started walking towards him. He stopped crying. He was really frustrated, and I just couldn't understand what was common sense for me with someone else. Someone else hadn't had. It wasn't until I did decide to write the book that I realized and looked a bit more into myself that not everybody has the same mindset or the same ability to connect. They had skills I didn't have. I had skills that they didn't have. But so after being with parents, I'm working with kids at home as well. The parents were saying the same thing. Well, why can't they at school do what you do? Or why is this? You've got to tell. So finally, when I retired, I really did have time to sit down, and I had decided, well, I have to do it. I have no choice. It's the skill I have. And if I want to be able to continue helping people who have difficulty communicating in any sense as well, even children under the autism or people under the autism spectrum, they're trying to tell us something. And because they're processing different than us, or somebody who doesn't and isn't in the autism spectrum, there's a miscommunication there. And if I can share what's happening with them, then other people can maybe look at it and realize, oh, wait a minute, I've got to look at this different. There's more here than they realize. So it became something I had to do. Something I thought, here, this is why I'm here on earth. This is my purpose in life, to reach out to all the people who work with people with diverse abilities.
And what do you think parents will, what do you hope, or what do you think parents will gain from this book?
What I hope people will gain from the book? Yeah, well, a sense of understanding their children, a sense of understanding themselves, by giving real life examples, not only of the children I've worked with, but also connecting it with as an adult sees the world. Just something as simple as if a child cannot communicate, think about yourself. You've just been skiing, you broke your leg, you broke your arm, you have laryngitis, you're on the couch, and you can't write. And a friend of yours has the remote control, in charge of everything. Think about that. That's what it's like being someone who cannot communicate without tools. So I want people to get not only an insight from their own children, insights into themselves, and insight into just understanding the connection between your child and yourself.
Yeah, I have to share with you, because I've been, listening to the book or reading the book, and it was very helpful. Right now we're in Florida, so obviously there's a hurricane. So there's a hurricane possibility. So anyways, so my daughter, who's 25, was starting to perseverate, and quite a bit. And you think that I would know some of these things, but from listening to your book, it really was very helpful, because it did give me insight. Like, she started perseverating not on the hurricane, but her schedule and her this and her that. So then I finally, you think I would already know this stuff, but from your book, like, I was able to see, like, this is her worrying. She doesn't know how to express herself. And I did get that from your book. Like, you think I would already know this, but it was like, da 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 da. Don't get upset with her, because normally I would get like, it's bothersome because it's nonstop. You know what I mean? With her, but then I realized, okay, there's a lot going on. I think you mentioned it. It was an example in your book that basically pointed it out to me. It was an example of, if it's a birthday party, or it's an event, or if it's this, or if it's all these little things are triggers. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's what it is. All of this stuff. Her sister was supposed to come home this weekend. It was this, like, she's worried about not being able to go to her day program. She's worried about, so it was very enlightening. And I think, have goosebumps, but I think that's what parents and teachers and educators could really gain from your knowledge, because you've been through it, you know what I mean? And you've put it there in a way that they can see it differently. So kudos to you. I thank you. Because like I said yesterday, it was not easy at our household, but I was more understanding of what might be going on in her world. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, when I found just when you were talking about that, I realized that we probably all do it. Because I know when I'm stressed out and I have things I'm worried about, then I start thinking, oh yeah, I should be doing this, and I should be doing that, and I should be doing this. And then I just pile it on myself. And in that way, it's the same issue. It's like, I can't cope. and so all these things start happening around me. So I didn't realize it was probably very similar.
Yeah, no, and well, and because, I think it's opening your eyes to, like you're saying, it is communication. She's trying to say something, she just doesn't know how to express all of those things that are going on in her world. Like the rest of us are wait and see. We have to wait and see what's going to happen with the hurricane, but that's really hard for her. Anyway, I don't want to get too off on that, but I did want to share that it was very beneficial and eye-opening. So I really appreciate it. So do you have a favorite memory from the book or an
Oh,
experience that you want to talk about?
yes, I think it was when I was working in. I was very young, well, very young at the time compared to my age now. I was in my late 20s, I guess, yeah. And I was working at a children's hospital. And it was like a rehab as well as a respite, as well as a diagnosis. And the hospital had 3 different daycares for the staff and the children at the hospital. And I worked in the 3 to 5-year-old daycare with some of the other staff. And so I was working with this one boy. He was on the mat. We had just finished. We were working on his legs and strengthening his legs, as usually the therapist would show us, and we would do it with him. So I'm, he's nonverbal, and I'm working on his legs, and all of a sudden he tightens, and I looked at him, and for all of a sudden it dawned on me, he's doing this on purpose. He's giving me a rough time. And I looked at him and I said, I'll call him Andy. I said, Andy, are you teasing me? Are you giving me a rough time? And his face just beamed. And it was like a whack on the side of the head that said, listen, look, inside this little body that doesn't seem to be working very well right now, is there's so much in there, so much in that brain there. And the other thing that really hit me was he was thrilled that somebody understood him, and he was thrilled that he and I were connecting. And that was just, yeah, that's my favorite memory, because it was the start of it all. I have so many more, but that's the one that I think says the most.
Yeah, no, I think that's an awesome story. So thank you for sharing. And I think that's so true, because I think everyone tends to look past them. They can't do this, so therefore there's nothing. And therefore he was really teasing you and had a really, he was excited, and that you got him. So it was almost like a laugh moment, whatever, So that's awesome. So I think that's great. So tell me a little bit more about communication. Like, what's your thought? I mean, it's pretty much it's everything.
Yeah, it is. It is. If people or children don't have any tool to communicate, they're not connecting with anybody. The other thing is we have no idea what's going on in the mind. We have no idea how much intelligence is there. We don't have any idea of how far that child can go, or what possibilities, or even what we can do to help bring that connection, how to help that child learn more. So we really do need to give tools to the children we have, or if there's teachers out there or education assistants, the children you work with, our children in our lives, if they don't have a means to communication, we lose out on so much. It's the ground basis of connecting and finding out about each other and being able to move forward in your life.
Yeah. I know this wasn't, we didn't discuss this in advance, but I'd like to ask you too, because I see a lot of, or I hear from parents, younger and even older parents, that have students or children that don't communicate, right? And they're so hesitant to use the augmentative communication devices or tools, because they think that they're stopping the child from actually using their voice. And what's your take on that?
My take on that is that the communication systems, the picture symbols, they encourage the words to come out. I had one family I worked with, and the boy had Down syndrome and autism, and so there was speech difficulties there. But his parents insisted on no sign language, and they didn't like picture symbols. But in the beginning, you need it. In the beginning, children really need it until they learn to read, until they really need to learn. The symbols help them see what's happening next, what's going to go next, what's going to go next. And the communication systems, the children do want to speak if they can, and they will. But there are times where some children just can't. I had one young boy, one boy I worked with in grade 2, grade 3 and 4, I think he was, grade 5 as well. And the speech and language therapist had said to me, okay, we're working on how many times does he vocalize during the day? If you could chart it. And I said, but it's just too many. And she said, well, just chart it. So within I think, was it in the morning or within 2 hours, I had charted over 100 vocalizations, and he had them. I knew when he meant yes, or when he meant no, or when he was excited to see someone. But he did not have the physical ability to use speech. So when he was using his communication system, he just thrilled. He loved it. He enjoyed it. He was able to do science projects and share it with the students. He was able to be, there was one time, I just said, it's wonderful. It's that he was in, the teacher and I had to go to a meeting. So there was a substitute teacher, and the other children, he always said if one of us wasn't there, he would have a partner with him to help him communicate if needed. So he had his communication board, and it would say, I want to go to the bathroom, or I need some help, or can someone sit with me, or Mrs. Bailey, can you come here, or Mrs. So-and-so, can you come here, and things like that, where he could communicate. So at the meeting, one of the children from the classroom came down and said, Henry needs to go to the bathroom. So I go down there, we get another assistant, we take him down to the bathroom. He didn't need to go. It was an excuse to get me out of the meeting. And it was all because he could use the communication system. And another time with the same boy is that after I went back to the meeting, the class was going to the library. So the teacher and I come back, and the classroom's empty. The other children were down in the library. They set up his communication board with the one he needed. They set up, he has a Big Mac, which says you can record words in there. So they had recorded thank you. And they had done everything. And he and his friends went down to the library. And it was wonderful because of the communication system. He was able to connect with everybody, be able to be independent. The picture symbols, the communication systems are a tool. And if the children can move forward from them while they're learning to vocalize and speak, you need that. You need that.
Yeah. So is there, I have another question. Wasn't quite, I wanted to ask you. Now, when you say successful learning, I know you mentioned that in your book, and I kind of like that, and that's something that I'm toying with. But how do you think, you're saying like different ways that children learn, and I know like I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm not sure if you're saying like the styles of learning, or are there other things that parents need to be aware of, like as far as helping their child learn? Because my thoughts are parents really need to understand how their child learn in order to be successful. And I know you mentioned that in the book, and I wrote it down because I think that's huge, not just because when you're working with teachers, when you're working with anybody, but the parents really need to know how that child works best.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Doesn't matter what their ability or skill is. Each child has a unique way of learning, and if you, as a parent, ask the kids, what's the best? How do you like? And how do you want? What don't you understand? Or sit with them as they're doing their schoolwork and see where they're getting stuck on, or what doesn't make sense to them. Let's see how it's uh, a lot of what for me, no, I was going to say it was intuitive, but some of the students I work with, I would like, even I've worked with kids with who usually have A or B marks or really high marks. And I've worked with them in math. And what I had to do, because the teachers, some of them, they would go too fast, or they had a different accent, it was hard to catch, or the students didn't have time to grasp the information before they could do the work. So when I was working with them at their own home, I could slow down and go backwards and figure out which step they've missed in order to move forward. So sometimes you have to go do that, is go and find out what comes before whatever you're learning, the student is learning, and find out what they've missed. Find out how they like to learn, what their learning process is. For one of the students I worked with him for 10 years, is that we would always front load them, get all the information beforehand, so they went into class, he had known some of the concepts, let's say for science. And we would use pictures that came from, let's say if it was volcanic reactions and things like that. So we would take a look at, I'd get the right pictures of which levels of the volcano are happening, and there'd be images of that, plus a definition, but then there'd be a spot, and it was a big chart. He could put down what he understood it to be. And so that made a difference too. Videos really helped. Like if there was a concept about, on science again, reactions. There were some great videos on showing how small a reaction is for phosphorus compared to another reaction, which is the same group on the chemical chart. They put that in a bathtub full of water, and even a teeny tiny bit, and it exploded the whole thing. So visually, it's great too. So if you find, take a look and see whatever it is on the internet that can help your children learn the concepts.
Right. Okay. So back to your book, is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we kind of wrap up?
Yes, actually, it's interesting. I mean, it's fun to read. Actually, it's enjoyable because it always starts out with a quote that makes you really start thinking, and that quote gives you a feel of what the whole book is going to be about, and some of the concepts that come up. There's a quote there that would indicate what that concept really means. So that's throughout the book. One reviewer said that she found that some of the students or characters or the people in the book, all the names are changed, by the way. Yes, there's some stories that are just one story about one child, but then there's several children that it goes actually on for years, and they can see some progress on how the child is developing. So it's almost like a story with the characters and the plot going on. That same reviewer said that it's not just for people connected with children with diverse abilities or adults with diverse abilities. It's for everybody, about connection and how to connect with each other. So I thought that was really neat. But every time I pick up the book to read it myself, to check something out, I go, oh, wow, this is really interesting. And I've enjoyed writing it, and I have enjoyed reading it.
Well, and I have too. I want to thank you as well, because I think that some of the things that, like I said, I've been reading it, but some of the things that you share in there, like some of those things take years to learn. You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like if people would get some of those insights, or teachers or whatever, it should be like they would know them in advance, because sometimes some of that stuff takes a long time for people to actually grasp, I think. So I appreciate that you put it all down for us, and that if people take the time to read it, or even the key points, right, they'll gain stuff, because And I think also one other thing I want to share is like that the fact that um, it almost, because you were saying it, it felt validated. Like, because as a parent, when you're going through it and you don't have anybody else to compare things with, you don't really know. You know what I mean? You're thinking, well, this is what I do, but I don't really know. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like validating, like, hey, like I'm referring to the part where you talk about hormones and puberty and stuff like that. It's like, yes, I knew it, but it didn't come out like right away like I knew. It's taken me years to kind of put that together. Where it's like if I would have heard maybe earlier, I could have made sure, okay, yes, this is definitely going to be trigger zones, you know. And anyway, so I
Um,
thank you.
just on that one comment is just to let your parents out there know you're emotionally connected to your children. So you are not going to pick up on some things. I could not tutor my own daughter, yet I could tutor all these other children, but I'm connected to her. And I want things to work out for her. So for her, I don't necessarily think as clearly. So that's what happens as a parent, is that when something, you know, as you said, I mentioned about puberty, and you go, well, I should have known that. Well, yes, you did know it, but because you're so connected and emotionally involved, it clouds your logic. It clouds common sense sometimes.
Right.
But just
And
take a breath, and it's okay, and it'll come to you. But I'm glad the book will help you all.
no, and I was going to say too, just on that too, is, and also they don't communicate the same way. They communicate differently. So I might not put the connection together that is puberty and this, because she's going off on something completely different, even though that, you know what I mean? So it's hard sometimes as parents to make the connection because of what the child's behavior is doing. You know, it's not the same. Right? There's not a link necessarily. Sometimes there might be a link, but you can't see it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, well, I can't thank you enough for being with us. The name of the book is to the World of Possibilities. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, and they can find it pretty much everywhere, right? Amazon, anywhere. You also have a site.
Yes, I have a website.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough. Like I made Xerox copies of some of the printout, you know, of the different things, because I'm like, these key points need to be like in front of you sometimes. So I thank you very much for sharing your life experience with us and the nuances that you've collected and insights, because um, I think it will be very beneficial to families and educators and anybody that picks up the book. So thank you for that. And we're gonna sign off, and thank you for everybody for being here today with us on Parenting Special Needs Live. And in case no one has told you that, you're doing a good job. Be good to you. It's hard work. Talk to you soon.